Kari will soon take the helm at America's most powerful global propaganda machine, and she'll react to President Trump's winning ways in the opening weeks of his administration. California is allowing school boards to defy executive orders while they allocate billions more dollars to pay for illegal immigrants. We've got Golden State Assemblyman Joe Patterson with us tonight, and it's Valentine's Day. If you're watching this live, things might not be going well in your love life. We've got new data on the loneliest people on the planet. Spoiler alert, it's liberal women. All next on the Matt Gaetz Show. Let's do this. We're shaking up Washington, D.C. We're breaking the fever.
You ever watch this guy on television? It's like a machine. He's great. Matt Gaetz.
Happy Valentine's Day. Today, Vice President J.D. Vance gave a stemwinder of a speech in Munich as he scolded Europe for mass migration and censorship.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. When we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. We must do more than talk about democratic values, we must live them. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants. But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town. Trust me, I say this with all humor. If American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk.
Vice President Vance had a message for the world. Don't retreat from your values. Too often, Europe has. Many of Europe's leaders have been willing to allow the United States to subsidize the continent's security as they've provided massive social welfare. The Vice President and Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. No doubt their message will echo President Trump's. The war must end. The Vice President's speech got us thinking about the infrastructure the United States already possesses to communicate truth to the world. And there's a strong nexus to Europe in our history. Imagine if the United States had a giant megaphone that could broadcast news, truth, and American spirit all over the planet. Well, guess what? We do. It's called Voice of America. Since 1942, VOA has been America's radio and TV station to the world, beaming out news and information in more than 40 languages. But it hasn't always been easy. From battling dictators to dodging political drama, VOA has had to combat challenging and ever-changing information landscapes. President Trump seeks to reinvigorate VOA, and he has selected a leader for this organization full of vigor and full of life, Arizona's Kari. With her many years of TV experience, a heart for the people, and a great relationship with President Trump, she's the perfect person to turn up the volume on America First at Voice of America. VOA was born in the heat of World War II. The Nazis were cranking out racist, anti-Semitic, vicious lies, and the United States needed to fight back, not just with bullets, but with the truth. So in 1942, the first ever VOA broadcast crackled over the radio waves in Germany.
This time we shall speak to you about America and the war. The news may be good or bad. We shall tell you the truth.
Good or bad, we shall tell you the truth. Boom! That was the beginning of what would be the world's largest international broadcaster. But it didn't stop with World War II. As the Cold War heated up, VOA became America's truth-telling machine, countering Soviet propaganda with facts. Whether it was beaming news into the Soviet states or China or Cuba, VOA became the beacon of free press in places where government controlled everything that people heard and saw. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union tried to block VOA signals so people couldn't even hear the message. China has done the same thing, using high-tech jamming to block its citizens from accessing VOA news. That's how powerful it is. The Chinese have literally had to develop countermeasures. But the biggest threats haven't just come from outside the United States. VOA isn't about telling people what America is up to. Its official mission is to serve as a consistently reliable and authoritative source of news. That means no fake news, no government spin, just the facts. It also promotes American values like democracy, freedom of speech, and human rights. VOA reaches an estimated 280 million people every week. That's a lot of eyeballs. They're tuning in from places where independent journalism is often under attack, from reporting on government corruption in Africa to exposing censorship in China. VOA is like a watchdog that never sleeps, and Kari Lake's one heck of a watchdog. So let's talk about the person who is going to be the powerhouse to lead this newsroom, Kari Lake. Before she became this major figure in politics, Kari Lake was a TV news anchor for more than 20 years. And she didn't just read the news, she owned it. She knows how to connect with her audience, ask tough questions, and make sure that people actually listen. And that's what's so important for this particular mission. VOA needs someone who understands media in all of its evolving forms. Plus, Kari Lake genuinely cares about people. Whether she's standing up for everyday Americans or calling out corruption, she's got passion to fight for the truth, something that aligns perfectly with VOA's mission. Kari Lake joins us now. Kari, Voice of America is this incredibly important and powerful organization within our government that you are set to run. Over 250 million viewers and listeners every single week. How excited are you that President Trump has asked you to lead this incredible organization?
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really excited. You know, I have a 30-year background in broadcast journalism, and I walked away from all of that when I decided that the media had just become so corrupt I didn't want to take part in it. So I really value good, honest journalism and truth-telling, and we've gone so far from that. And I want to make sure that we're taking this valuable asset, this soft power of the United States government, and making sure that we're putting out fair and accurate information. I don't want to see Trump deranged syndrome television, nor do I want it to be Trump TV. I want it to be accurate, honest, and reliable information. And so we're going to work to do that. We're going to work to cut back any fraud and waste that's happening in the department and make sure that all of our journalists and correspondents are out there informing the world. And this is really, I think people hear Voice of America and they think, how do I find it? It's customers, as I refer to them, is the people that they're trying to reach are actually a global market. We're trying to reach countries that don't have a fair and honest press, that don't have access to real, true information. And that's why it's so important that Voice of America put out good, honest, reliable information, not biased information, not, TDS TV, like I said. We want to put out good, honest information. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not in the door yet, by the way. There's a process that I have to go through to get in, like so many things in the bureaucracy, Matt, and you're well aware of it. There's a lot of red tape and landmines and hoops to jump through before I can get in the door.
Well, we look forward to having you there, and I was just so excited when I saw this announcement because I know your passion for storytelling and for broadcasting, and Voice of America is like the most powerful propaganda machine the United States government has had for freedom and for true American values, and I'm so excited for you. We're going to be rooting you on in that role, but there's so much going on right now. I'd love to get your reaction to it. President Trump is signing these executive orders like a blitzkrieg. What has been your favorite action the president's taken thus far?
It's so funny. I've watched so many of them, as many in America have. And, you know, when he signs his signature, and I'm sure you've been around him when he signed it before, there's a distinct sound of that Sharpie hitting the paper. And I thought we almost need to put that on a loop because for many Americans, that is the sound of our country and what's been wrong with it being unwound. And we're getting our country back. We're watching as things like men playing in women's sports is getting tossed out. We're watching as we are making sure that we are going to make America healthy again and setting up a commission to make America healthy again. We're watching as, various different EOs that he's signed, and it's really a wonderful thing. I'm astounded at how quickly President Trump is moving. I don't think anybody expected this to go so fast, but we should have expected it, Matt, because he's been saying for so long, you're going to get tired of winning. There's going to be so much winning. And now we're getting a feel of what it looks like to have that winning happen. Let's face it, our government's in trouble. Our government has been corrupt for a long time. It's been bloated. It's been too big. And it's almost like a patient on life support, except this patient has 10, 20, 50 severed arteries. And we've got Elon Musk handing out the tourniquets trying to save the patient. This must happen. I know that for many people in the bureaucracy, it's a shock. They've never been asked before to resign from their job or take a payout and leave their job. All we've ever seen over the years is the bureaucracy growing. And finally, President Trump is coming in and saying, we have to get this in check, or we will not have a country any longer. We're at critical mass. And when you hear the left and many in the Uniparty in sync saying we have a constitutional crisis, indeed we do. The constitutional crisis is the bureaucracy has taken total control. We, the people, have lost all control, and we're trying to, as a nation, wrestle that power back. The power belongs to the people. And then we're seeing a secondary crisis in that these lower courts, these inferior courts in various counties and areas around the country are trying to take the president's power, the executive branch power, away from the executive branch. So there is potentially a constitutional crisis, but it's not what the Uniparty is saying. The Uniparty is trying to say, you're looking under the hood of all of this misspending and fraudulent spending, and we don't like that, so we're going to call it a constitutional crisis. I think they're a little bit mixed up on that.
They really are, and I have been fascinated to watch how some of the Democrats in Congress have reacted to this. There have been a few, like Ro Khanna and Jared Moskowitz, who've said, well, let's see what Elon Musk uncovers. There may actually be some waste here that needs to be rooted out. But like 98% of them are showing up at largely empty federal buildings and ranting and raving. And I wonder if that doesn't push more people away from their viewpoint, because it sort of looks like they're defending the waste. It doesn't really look like they're interested in finding it. Do you see risk in that, just as a pure communication strategy?
I see a lot of risk in that. I mean, it's just basic common sense that if you are standing up, shouting and screaming to protect government waste and fraud and this outrageous level of bureaucracy, then there's a really good chance that you might have some blood on your hands, that maybe you've got a little bit of guilt in there. Is there something you're trying to hide? Every person who's in Congress, every person who's part of our government should want to make sure that our hardworking tax dollars are being spent wisely. And I look at anybody with a great deal of skepticism who's shouting and yelling and trying to stop President Trump from doing his duty to protect us.
Well, I would think anybody would want to find the way. Like, anybody who shows up on the job should want to do this. I think Secretary Kristi Noem had the right approach. She welcomed DOJ in and said, "Hey, what do you see here that could help us do our job better?" Isn't that the type of approach you would take to try to initially audit what's working and what isn't in any organization?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Maxine Waters, if the bank said to her, we've detected a ton of fraud in your bank account and your money's disappearing, we don't know where it's going, but we're not going to look into it. Yeah, I would think that she would call the bank and say, you better get on that right now, shut this down, stop all payments because we don't know where they're going, and this is my hard-earned money. But that's not what she's doing when it comes to protecting hardworking taxpayers' money. And the problem, I think, so much of it is people who are working in Washington, D.C., people who are part of that bureaucracy, many of them have lived there and worked there for decades. They never get outside. All of their friends and the main part of their social circle also are part of the bureaucracy, whether they work for the federal government or work for NGOs or lobbying. Their entire being centers around making money off the government. And so those are the only people they're surrounded by. And all of those people are flabbergasted because we're taking a look under the hood and trying to figure out where all the money is going. What they really need to do is take a 2-week vacation to the heartland of America. Go to Wisconsin, go to Iowa, go to Alabama, Texas, Arizona. Go talk to some hardworking people who are barely scraping by, and they're looking at April 15th, that daunting doom day, which is tax day coming, and they're going to have to write another check to the federal government. And they're, frankly, I hate to use such a harsh term, they're pissed off right now watching this fraud happening. These people need to get out of D.C. and go talk to some hardworking Americans, and maybe they'll have an attitude shift about what's happening.
One final question for you. I know as an Arizonan, you care so deeply about the border and creating greater safety and security in the interior of the country. As we are watching these ICE raids, do you feel as though a lot of the issues you campaigned on, the issues you championed, are being vindicated by all of this action?
You know, I really do. I started campaigning in 2021 when I first ran for governor, and I was in I think 5 people at the time were in the Republican primary, and immediately I said our number one border, our number one issue is the border. We have an invasion on the border, and the look on these other Republicans' faces, they were horrified. They're like, don't mention the border. And I said, are you kidding me? This is the number one issue. And from 2021, it has gotten worse and worse and worse. And then January 20th of this year, right at 12:01, and boom, things got shut down. Within a matter of days, we went from wide open borders to a trickling of people coming over. And now I don't think there's hardly anybody coming over. And we're watching great heroes like you mentioned, Kristi Noem and Tom Homan, one of my all-time favorite people in the world, who are getting to work, sending these people back. We're repatriating them back to their homeland. We are giving them a comfortable ride back to their homeland. We are creating millions of homecomings over the course of the next years to people returning back to their homeland so we can save our homeland. I knew I was right at the time. I knew President Trump was right, and now we're seeing that the entire world really is supportive of this for the most part. Don't believe the fake news media. We just had a poll out today. Swing voters in Arizona, 100% of them in the poll said they support wholeheartedly what President Trump is doing. And I believe that number is so high here, Matt, because we're right here on a border state. We've suffered from the crime. We've suffered from our expenses going up because we're competing now for everything with millions of people here illegally. We're suffering with our kids' education, where all of a sudden teachers are trying to teach in 50 different languages instead of just in English. It's really outrageous. And now we're feeling all of a sudden a huge sense of relief that our streets are going to be safer again.
Kari Lake, President Trump's choice to lead Voice of America, we wish you well, and I hope you and your husband are able to have a little time for a lovely Valentine's Day tonight. He is a trooper on the campaign trail, and you absolutely deserve a little of that time together.
Yes, he is. He's on his way home right now, so I'm looking forward to seeing him. Thank you, Matt.
Enjoy.